Officer for Allianz Life Insurance Company, part of the Allianz Group globally.
My name is Mitch Bedved. I'm the CFO at Polychain Capital. We're a registered investment advisor that has cryptocurrency hedge funds and venture capital funds. We have about $5 billion in assets under management. San Francisco, I've lived here for 6 years, and I was doing this competition about 11 years ago.
Great, and then we'll just have the online, our online judges, feel free to jump in with introductions.
Sure. I'm Justin Goodman in Shivani. Can't see you right now, but it's great to hear your voice again. Shivani and I were actually on a team, I guess 20 years ago. I can't believe it was that long ago, but a long time. Hey!
Hey, so good to see you. So Justin was in my team, and I haven't seen him in 20 years. What's going on?
Yeah, lots of stuff. So, yeah, I was part of the competition as a student twice, and actually worked for Tom White, or Dr. White, for a number of years, and so I know this competition well. I have worked for several different startup tech companies located around usually the West Coast, and presently I work for one in real estate technology, and yeah, pleasure to be here. Look forward to your presentation.
Awesome. I am Emily Johnson. I am also a previous participant in IBEC about 7 years ago. Currently, I am a data privacy attorney up at Medtronic in Minnesota. I got a chance to read over your executive summary. Really looking forward to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And how about quick introductions of all of you?
My name is Isabel Slattery, and I am a freshman poli-sci major at University of Southern Florida, St. Petersburg.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Lovato. I'm a second-year student at USF, double majoring in economics and political science.
Hi everyone, I'm Liana. I'm a senior at USF, and I'm double majoring in economics and history.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm a second year at USF, and I am pursuing a double major in English and political science.
Hey, I'm Charles Dane. I'm a freshman at USF St. Pete, and I'm majoring in political science and economics.
Wonderful. And then your extended team?
Hi, I'm Blair. I'm also second year at USF, and I'm majoring in business management.
Great.
Hi, I'm Clemens. I'm a second year at USF, and I'm majoring in health sciences.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm actually the guest. I'm majoring in political science, also at University of South Florida.
Great.
I'm Nathan. I'm a junior. I'm studying finances and a little bit of accounting and legal studies. So.
Excellent. Wonderful. Good to meet everyone. All right.
And
Well,
just so everybody knows, for the people just on the online presence, whoever just spoke, the last two people, very hard to hear, but I could hear most of the presenters pretty well.
Yep.
The two women who are on the far side of the room from me, a little bit more difficult to hear, so please over-pronunciate.
Will do. We'll project. All right. So I'll just start with some very brief instructions, and then we'll get started. All right. So in this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to us, the judges. Please make sure that everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all three counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 20 minutes. We'll time that. During the Q&A, both you and the judges will stay in character. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role that they're playing during the presentation. Some important things to keep in mind: the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, they should be described in very simple, practical, and common sense terms. Using any technical terminology or basing your arguments on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any team member who is reading his or her part verbatim will be considered a major mistake in presentation, although you of course may use your notes. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. Any questions? Okay. All right, I will begin the timer for 25 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles. I am the General Consultant for Trust, Track Solutions. Today, our team will present to you the Flow Board of Directors, our solution to make Flow both become ethical and simultaneously increase profit. Today, our team consists of me, the general consultant, Olivia is our legal consultant, Liana, ethical, Nicole, financial, and Isabel, solutions. Now, we all know Flow is doing pretty good right now, but how do you stay there? Flow is known for being a company that is innovative, adaptive, and ahead of the game. And that is our job today, to keep you in that position. A company that supersedes their competition and is ahead of the time and as innovative as it can be. Now, getting started. For those of you who aren't, imagine that you're a woman. Imagine that once a month you get your period. You, like many other women, want to track it for various health reasons, including maximizing a workout routine or best time to conceive a child, something along those lines, whatever the reason may be. You download an app to do this. Many women do it. About 300 million users downloaded Flow, Clue, and Natural Cycles. But even more women don't use these apps. They don't want their information in the hands of someone else. What's offered by these apps simply is not good enough for women to surrender their personal information. So, what we propose is going to be later on in the presentation, we'll be going over that. But for now, I'd like to give you an example of this. Jamie Lamb, a Canadian citizen. She gave up information regarding her menstrual cycle and how often she and her husband were having intercourse. Ms. Lamb took the suit because she did not want her information in the hands of somebody else. She did not feel comfortable with that. And Ms. Borick, our legal consultant, will be going further into depth about Ms. Lamb's case later on in the presentation. But the whole lawsuit took place because women don't want their information in the hands of somebody else, and they didn't know it was going to be in the first place. Now, some of you may be looking at our slide and considering that the word intercourse makes you possibly feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's a little bit odd, yes. But think about how Ms. Lamb feels, right? It's not just a word out there for her, it's actual actions. It's what happened to her, it's what she does, it's what she and her husband do. How do you think she feels with that, all that information out there? Now, if you're still struggling to relate, imagine how you would feel. Imagine how your wife, your mother, your sister, your daughter, any female loved one you know, imagine how they would be affected by this. Ask them if they trust apps like Flow. Ask them if they trust their information in the hands of somebody else. The answer is probably that they don't. So we propose a solution to this. We propose that Flow move towards a more HIPAA adjacent agenda. This will allow the user the ability to consent, the protection of their private data, and the personal autonomy that they so deeply desire within these apps. What we propose to accomplish this is the Flow app move towards a opt-in privacy policy. In this case, instead of opting out like as they do currently, users will have to opt in for Flow to gather and distribute personal data. Now, I know what you're thinking. People are just going to opt out. Everyone's just going to opt out. But with our business solutions, that will not be the case. What we propose is that people who opt in will receive a percentage discount off of premium services, and we believe that this will truly engage customers and encourage them to interact both with the app in general and with the premium services. Now, our financial and solution consultants will dive deeper into this concept later on in the presentation, and for now, I would like to pass over to our legal consultant, Olivia.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you so much to the Flow Board of Directors for having us here today. Once again, my name is Olivia, and I'm the legal consultant here with Trust Track Solutions. Today, I would like to begin by talking about your bottom line: trust. Trust in technology, trust in the law, and most importantly, trust in companies. We begin today by referencing a direct quote from the Flow privacy policy, which greets users when they first open and sign up for the app. It reads, and I quote, "I will not transmit any of your personal data to third parties unless otherwise is provided by this privacy policy. We will never share your exact age or any data related to your health with any third parties." Board of Directors, you will see today that the actions done by Flow is a fundamental violation of this privacy policy, because we see that the data is being shared. And we begin with Frasco v. Flow Health Inc., when allegations of sharing this personal data and health information with third parties and tech giants such as Facebook and Google came out. And multiple individual complaints consolidated into a class action lawsuit. Additionally, there was an FTC settlement for these violations between 2016 and 2019. We will see today that the possibility of lawsuits is not just something that may happen or that can happen if Flow continues down this route. It is something that is currently, presently happening. In order to address the sharing of this data, we propose moving towards a more HIPAA-adjacent policy. HIPAA, which stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, hinges on 3 fundamental principles. The privacy rule, which dictates how PHI, or personal health information, can be used and disclosed. The security rule, which sets safeguards for electronic PHI, making sure that this information is actually safeguarded and making sure that it is protected from outside attack. And the breach notification rule, which actually mandates disclosure in the event that there is a data breach. We are talking about information that is extremely, extremely sensitive that women enter into this app, including when they have a period, how often they have intercourse, and even the types of medication that they use, such as birth control. Now, the fact that how often a woman has her period is entered is extremely crucial when we are talking about the state of abortion and the conversation surrounding abortion that is happening in our government today. Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned Roe v. Wade, raises significant concerns about abortion criminalization, and even raises concerns about the fact that the data that is entered by women, once again the extremely sensitive data, could actually be subpoenaed in court during trial. By moving towards our HIPAA-adjacent guideline, while we cannot 100% guarantee that the data will not be subpoenaed, we can actually move towards more protection for this data and even anonymity, which we will talk a little bit about later as well. Now, going back a little bit into the lawsuit aspect, we are not just mentioning lawsuits within the US, but also outside of the US, such as Canada or British Columbia. With Lamb v. Flow Health Inc., the court has recently approved this case as a class action lawsuit in British Columbia, which raises significant concerns and significant reality about potential future lawsuits outside of the US, and even in Europe, where the regulations for this data are actually stricter. We implore Flow and you, the board of directors, to consider moving towards this HIPAA-adjacent guideline, because the future of legal issues is very real and very present. To dive a little bit deeper into the ethical dimensions of our case today, I will now be passing it over to our ethical consultant, Liana.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Once again, my name is Liana, and I'm the ethical consultant with Trust Track Solutions. Today, I'm going to walk you through the ethical dimensions of our current focus on your platform. This focus being a lack of data privacy. We're going to show you why today this lack of data privacy is not only hurting your bottom line, but also impacting the ethicality of your company. So we're going to start with the foundations of this ethical issue. We're going to go directly to flow.health, your website. We see some incredible information. We see that Flow is the leading women's health app on the global market. We also see some mission statements from Flow, including why users should choose Flow over the competitors. We see that you should choose Flow because of predictions you can plan around, personal data that stays private to you, and information that you can trust. But with all of this being said, where exactly are we going wrong? We see that within those mission statements, there are a host of misleading claims. Misleading at best, omitting of the truth at worst. We also see that these misleading claims lead to an atrophy of trust, which then in turn leads to missed opportunities for Flow to profit. So we want to dive a little bit deeper into those mission claims we talked about. We see here this personal data that stays private to you. In reality, this is far from the truth. We see that Flow is currently bartering with tech giants such as Facebook and Google to get SDKs or software development kits in exchange for this information. We're seeing that because there's no profit, Flow is technically correct that they're saying they're not exchanging this information for profit. We still view this claim as unethical. And of course, we want to dive a little bit deeper into what exactly the definition of personal data is in this instance. We see that this personal data only includes information that can be tied directly to you. This information includes your name, your email, and your birth date, anything that can identify you. But what's not included is all of the personal health information that you are entering into this app, which has been discussed by my colleagues before me. We also want to discuss this data privacy mission statement as well. We see that Flow has ISO security and ISO privacy certifications, and we commend you for this. These are incredibly hard certifications to get. They're internationally recognized. But in reality, with this particular ethical issue that we are discussing today, we would argue that this can actually paint a worse picture for Flow, the company. We see that these certifications indicate that Flow is protected from outside criminal attacks. So these are people that are going to try to hack into Flow's database and take the information. But what this is actually saying is that Flow has the autonomy necessary to get these certifications, this autonomy over this data. So what you are doing with this information, Flow is doing alone. We want to bring this back to our bottom line, trust, consent, and trust. We want to make very clear that we do not believe that data sharing or data selling is inherently unethical. But we do want to say that doing this without explicit consent, especially through an opt-in system, is unethical. And doing so, just like with a medical procedure, without exploring the risks that are possible and communicating these clearly and transparently, is also unethical. And importantly, it is taking you further away from those missions that we discussed. We see here a couple quotes, one from Eva Galperin, the Electronic Frontier Foundation CEO, and we see another quote from Elizabeth McLaughlin, the Gaia Project for Women Leadership. These women are advocating for all women across the world to delete these apps in case it can be used against them in court. And of course, because we are discussing ethics today, we want to explore the duties and harms. We see here, we want to make sure that Flow's policies are HIPAA adjacent. Now this is different than HIPAA compliant because there's no direct relationship between a physician and a customer in this instance. But what we want to do is abstract those medical ethical maxims that are found within HIPAA, like duties to protect, duties to do no harm, and some that we'll discuss a little bit later as well. We want to make sure these are implemented into the policies of Flow. And the harms that can come if these duties are not followed through include the threat of re-identification, emotional distress from the users, and again, this erosion of trust. So what can we do to fix these issues? We believe as your consulting company, you can gather consent directly from your users, you can use complete transparency, and you can partner with organizations like the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists through our solution. Our solution will also lead to higher engagement and feelings of goodwill with your customers and with your company. To dive a little bit deeper into what our solution looks like, I'll now pass it off to my colleague, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Liana. And thank you all, Flow's Board of Directors, for having us here today. My name is Nicole, and I'm the financial consultant for TrustTrack. My colleague, Isabel, will be leading solutions, and together we'll be guiding you through the very last steps of our proposal. Now, to start with, I would like to present Flow's most recent revenue and where it mainly originates from. Launched in 2016, Flow is a very recent app in the market that shortly grew to become the most popular period tracking app in the world. Flow generates all of its revenue from its premium service, and it amounted to $200 million in 2023 with 62 million active users. Flow is also the very first women digital health app to achieve unicorn status, which means a company's overvaluation of $1 billion. We commend Flow for that, and for everything it's been bringing to the market, and for its users. However, we want to level up, both ethically and financially.
Now that brings us to our solution. What we at TrustTrack Solutions propose is that there's to be a HIPAA adjacency through the explicit consent of its users,
by utilizing the selling of data to ACOG recommended research facilities alone.
Now, before I dive into the financial implications of our solution, I would like for all of us to stop for a second and to think about the importance of organizational ethics. While personal ethics is highly shaped by individual beliefs and values of what is right and what is wrong, in a business, being ethical is a strategic decision that can both save you a lot of money and make you profit even more. It's not hard to believe that if Flow wasn't accused of sharing users' data with third-party companies like Facebook and Google, the company would have saved a lot of money. Although it's not publicly disclosed how much money Flow actually spent on those legal battles, a similar action in California in 2020 against a fertility tracking app with similar privacy violations amounted to $250,000 on civil penalties. Although that might not seem like a lot, especially when we're talking about a billion-dollar company like Flow, what we want to emphasize here is that those accusations are going to keep coming if Flow doesn't do something about it. Moreover, a very important intangible asset is damaged when a company engages in unethical behavior: goodwill. The value of Flow's name is not only tied to the quality of the services it provides, but to its reputation in the market. Moreover, we will go on. The value of Flow is not only based on the quality of its service, but to something much more everlasting and meaningful: the relationship it builds with its users. And no relationship exists without trust. Our bottom line: trust makes you money. If Flow's users cannot trust the app, they will simply migrate to another one as soon as the next cool feature is available. According to the Institute of Customer Service, 81% of customers hold trust as a deciding factor in whether or not to use an organization. And 95% are likely or very likely to remain a customer of a business they trust. Being known for delivering good service might attract new customers. However, fostering a relationship founded upon trust, transparency, and consent is what will keep them.
Now, going further into what this means and how this will actually be implemented as our solution, we propose over the course of 4 years maximum of the following 4 steps. Step 1, HIPAA and ACOG. Step 2, data. 3, selling. And 4, the additional benefits. Now, starting off with HIPAA. The choice of HIPAA comes from its high ethical standards and its core belief of the prevention of economic, social, and legal harm to the individuals affected, as well as the information being guarded with respect and autonomy. The people on the other side of the screen are not just numbers, they are people. Your business is people. And we implore you to take the actions taken with this information to become necessary with consent. Now, the other part of this is ACOG. ACOG, the American Collegiate of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, as my colleague Liana had discussed, prioritizes on the promotion of software within clinics that makes it the most beneficial for both its practitioners and the patients. Now, this would be the first ever app to actually come recommended by ACOG. You would be pioneering the industry once more, setting the standard, no longer just meeting one. As well as this would advocate for greater trust and transparency with a third-party organization giving approval, as well as it's a tool to use. It's a way to advocate for oneself in doctors' offices, and as well as the increasing of public perception being a lot more positive. Now, step 2, data. Now, this would come with the automatic de-identification of this data. With how the current policy stands, it is the opting out of the anonymous setting, which is what we propose, but with the current setting, it has you opt into anonymous mode. As well as with the opting into this anonymous mode, it actually causes a dysfunction among some of the features within the premium services. We would like to change that, as it should not be interfering with any of the premium services to desire anonymity. 3, selling. Now, we at Trust Track Solutions would like to reiterate there is nothing inherently ethically wrong with the selling of data, but is moreover the consent and how it is being utilized. Now, we would be utilizing the consent of the user, and this would be going to humanitarian causes for medical research and historical research, as to come recommended by the trusted organization of ACOG. Now, this would be using the clear language as well as explicit consent as highlighted under HIPAA policies, and as well as the benefits to the users. There would be 20% off once one decides to consent with given explicit consent, and we at Trust Track Solutions recommend a price point of $75 per consent. Now, for the additional benefits, with this grand amount of revenue coming in from this consensual exchange of data, the research conducted can be going back into the app for the users to use to advocate for oneself. The core principles of your app Flow is quite magnificent with its
desire to educate the public. This would be another way to improve the app functions as well as advertisements and funding of philanthropic desires, which is remaining within your app's core values, as well as the greater traffic towards the app without the use of these SDK packages that your app was accused of.
Implementing HIPAA might sound like a costly and complicated process. However, because we're approaching HIPAA as an ethical set of guidelines to follow rather than an entity to legally comply to, Flow's cost would only entail staff training and policy development, which would amount to an initial investment of $5,000 that could last a lifetime, especially if Flow directed efforts to ensure that this staff training and policy new development would be digitally available for future administration and employees. Now, a very important question that I would like to address is, why is personal health data even worth money? And for that, we have a chart showing all the different stakeholders that care about medical data and why. Although they use the acquired data for different purposes, all of them share the same core feature. They want medical data because it allows them to engage in better decision making, which can make them profit more. Specifically with research companies, they need access to large databases to make any valid claims. And conducting clinical trials is not only an extensive and expensive process, but it also costs much more resources. Understanding this background makes it easy to understand that research companies are willing to pay apps like Flow Health for their data, where users from all over the world are daily inputting their valuable health information. According to Healthcare Insights, the price of clinical data records range from 5 cents to $125 per record. When you average those values, you find out that a single person's health-related data is worth about $75 today. According to research, 74% of US consumers are willing to share personal information with brands when prompted. And one of the top motivating factor for consumers to do so are coupons and deals. What is included in our solution with our 20% off discount? When you take that percentage into consideration and you multiply with the already existing 5 million premium subscribers in the app, you would be having at least 3.7 million people opting in to data sharing just for the sake of discount, looking at least $277.5 million extra in revenue. Not even taking into account the people who would be consenting to data because they want their data to help women's research, or even the people who would be joining the app because of an improvement in trust. It might seem like Flow doesn't have to worry about this. After all, it already dominates the market, and that's pretty feasible. However, there are other threats to worry about. For example, Flow is the app with the least amount of revenue per user. What does that mean in the long term? We want to focus here not only in current revenues, but about the long-term financial sustainability of Flow.
And now, doing a brief ethical analysis after this through SWOT, we have been speaking about the amazing strengths and opportunities that this plan does have in store, but focusing on some of the weaknesses is that it may take a maximum of 4 years to implement, which may prove as a challenge, as well as the user skepticism initially about the selling of data. And we also would like to address the fact that there is a threat that competitors might still follow this model as well as the fluctuating demands from ACOG-related medical research. Yet again, we would like to reiterate, fluctuating still means that there is still revenue to be made off of that. Or yet again, you could be making the standard, not just meeting it.
Today, our team has presented to you the Flow Board of Directors, how we at Trust Track Solutions believe that we can make your company both ethical while simultaneously increasing profit. And if you take anything away from today's presentation, please make it this. It is vital to make Flow an app that is inherently interested in and protective of women's rights, health, and safety as they are the customer. Thank you, guys.
And you have 33 seconds left. No, great job. Okay. Well, so just a quick reminder, we're staying in our role. We will now start a 20-minute timer, and we'll just go through some of the judges' questions. And then after that, we'll again start some more time and explore some of your questions. Okay. Judges, feel free to jump in.
I can start. That's
I get the sense that the sharing of personal data is inherently risky. But you're okay with that if somebody pays for it. Can you help me understand whether or not we would be obligated to be providing disclosures? And if so, what disclosures would we be required to provide if in fact we were allowing people to pay for us using their data?
Yes, there is, for example, there are some other companies that follow a slightly similar model to this. There's a federally run company called Healthy Start that provides similar disclosures as to what we would like to go for, where they state and disclose within their privacy policies, as well as their contracts between their company and the other company, that the data has to be consensual, and it has to be under it just has to be under like an explicit consent between the users, the company, and where they're being sold to, as well as the users being informed of where it is being going to.
So let me just follow up on that. So what I'm hearing is that the risk is not the sharing of the information. The risk is the knowing sharing of the information.
I would also like to add that it's not only about sharing or selling data, but specifically, what is that data being used for? So with our solution, we would just be selling data for ACOG approved research facilities. So that is our main aspect of the solution, and that would also be combined with the consent from the user about knowing where their data is going and getting all the benefits from that.
Additionally, we also stress the importance of the de-identification aspect. So by making sure that the data is not actually personally identifiable, in addition to our HIPAA adjacent guideline, we can ensure that these organizations will be protecting the sensitive information.
So if we limit it to those that are approving it, and we limit it to COG certified, do we have any sense of what that's going to cost us for limiting that kind of use?
Yeah, so we would be selling them, and the cost involved would just be about staff training and policy implementation. And what does that mean specifically? It's just teaching people who work at Flow about what FI entails and what it means to be handling that sensitive information, and be choosing what are the ACOG research facilities. How do we explain to users who might ask questions, where is their data going? So the cost would just be involved with staff training and policy implementation, which would be $5,000.
I think I had a similar question around the limitation of who we sell the data to. One of the metrics you threw out was a person's information being worth $75. Let's assume that's true. That's if you were to optimize and sell it to everyone that would want it, I would assume. And so if we're only doing a subset, is it still worth the $75 that's in this presentation?
Again, when we done the SWOT analysis, we did state that it might fluctuate, and that is something that we do have to take into consideration, that it might not always be the solid $75. That's what we would like to recommend if at all available, but there is still that possibility for a level of fluctuation in how much they're willing to pay for.
Also, I would like to address that the reason why we're focusing on only selling this data to ACOG research companies is because of the goodwill associated with that. So consumers, women, they would feel more they would feel safer about knowing that that data is going into research facilities and not just apps like Facebook or Google, which users feel more skeptical about because of everything associated with that, and that's why we'd be limiting that. And also, I'd like to emphasize that right now, Flow is not making any profit with sharing that data, but just exchanging. So if we take this first step about just selling to research companies, that doesn't necessarily prevent us from making changes in the long run. But as of right now, this is the most ethical solution in our view.
I'm skeptical of the $75 mark.
Okay.
So let's say we have 62 million users, $75 per user, $565 million in revenue for sharing and selling the data. When our annual revenue is $200 million, if it was worth that, I would assume we'd already be doing it. And so I guess the other question would be around some of the incentives that you threw out to get people to opt into it. What is going to be the impact of the 20% discount? How did you arrive to that?
Yeah, so the impact of the 20% discount, of course, you would be losing a little bit of money because of the discount, but with we thought about including that in one of the weaknesses, but we thought it was better not to, especially because if you're improving trust in the app and making your company a better reputation in the market, you can even increase your premium services, and people are still gonna be feeling good about opting in with discount, even though the price might be higher, because people in general just feel better about opting in with discount. And with the number that you said about the 62 million active users, we're focusing here only on the premium users for now, because Flow is not making any money from its active users alone, even though that would also be an option. Active users who do not want to engage in premium services could also be opting in to these policies. But right now we want to just focus on the minimum revenue you can make, because you can make much more, and that's the truth. But yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, part of the recommendation is moving to HIPAA adjacent. One of the things about HIPAA is it legally protects the data. Being HIPAA adjacent would be an internal policy, so it would not legally protect the data. So if someone's main concern, which you brought up with Roe v. Wade, is the potential of this being subpoenaed, us being HIPAA adjacent actually does not impact whether or not we would provide that data at all. Correct.
So we had discussed that, we had thought about that, and the reason why we would like to specifically focus on ACOG approved medical research is that they do have to be HIPAA compliant, which is where we might not have the same level of legal binding when it comes to the strength of subpoenas against police forces, but when it comes to these medical research industries with already de-identified data, that provides another safe lock that we currently do not have with Flow.
All right, let's move to our online judges. Did you want to jump in with some questions?
Yeah, I'm struggling with why we should be selling our data to for-profit companies outside of making money ourselves, which is our goal as a company, to make money. We have shareholders or investors we need to satisfy. But if we know that data is not going to be necessarily handled most appropriately, should we be selling it? You know, are we just introducing a bigger problem down the road?
Yeah, so I can take that question. So part of this process and part of the reason why we're recommending ACOG is because of the ethicality of the organizations themselves. So when we're talking about partnering with institutions such as ACOG, we're wanting to make sure that we're having these clear, communicative conversations as we're establishing those relationships and building this trust between these two companies as well. And we're talking about where this data is going. The reason why we're choosing institutions like ACOG is because it's going to be going to research costs. So it's going to be funding research, women's health research, doing good for society. So of course there's there's also other organizations that we can also consider as well partnering with. So we also want to make clear that it's not just ACOG at this point, but we're using this as an example. But there's just a lot you can do with this information.
Okay, I think there is a case to be made for anonymized data being sold to whomever, but it truly does need to be anonymized. And that could also be very beneficial for a variety of advertising purposes, but it just has to be definitive separation, you know, between identifiable and non-identifiable information.
You mentioned that.
Okay, I'll chip in.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That wasn't a question, that was a comment. I'm
Okay.
asking a question for it.
So I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna first piggyback off of what Justin had said. So since we are not beholden to HIPAA, but we want to kind of base our decisions on being HIPAA adjacent, I do think there's a case to be made that fully anonymized data is beneficial, and HIPAA does provide a great safe harbor for fully compliant de-identification. What are we going to do? How are we going to set the standard on what we feel like is anonymized data if we're not beholden to HIPAA? And do we feel like it is going to be communicated well enough to patients that they feel like that is comprehensive? So have you considered how we might determine what standard we use to de-identify data? Are we going to fully match HIPAA, or what considerations would you provide there?
That is a really good question. We would like to try to uphold as much as HIPAA as we can without it being legally binding, because it is not between doctors and patients, it's just between an app and its user. So we would still like to try to uphold this highest level of de-identification as we can with the maintenance of this anonymity.
And switching gears a bit, currently we have this opt-out function. So I don't think we have a high risk of violating any, major data privacy laws. People really don't want their data to be shared. They have the option to opt out. I understand that providing an opt-in is a way to build consumer trust and allows them to kind of have more control over how their data is used. But do you feel like you're gonna be able to capture enough new customers that will offset the amount of data that we might be losing by switching from an opt-in to an opt-out?
Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about building that consumer trust and building that relationship with ACOG and other approved organizations, we are talking about women opting in for the purpose of further research, but also for the benefit of in-app features as well, as it relates to both premium users and non-premium users. So having that clear communication and making it explicitly clear that the data is protected will generate more, not only more premium members, but more traffic in general to the app.
And even if we don't have that many people opting in, we would still be looking at more revenues than Flow is making right now. Especially because we would be avoiding the probability of new lawsuits involved with that, because we would be following a HIPAA adjacent agenda. And besides that, we would just be improving trust in the app, which would attract more users.
I think my only concern would be if I switch from a board member and put on my consumer hat, if I log into the Flow app and I decide to sign up and I am presented with a prompt that says, would you like to opt in to share your very sensitive health information based on the current climate where there's kind of some noise around Roe v. Wade and the potential of this information being sold to, or subpoenaed or sold to kind of someone that might not be a great steward of the data. As a consumer, I don't know if I would be fully incentivized to click yes. But I do appreciate the use of potentially those incentives. So that would be kind of my closing thought.
Well, actually, kind of to address a little bit of that, what we sort of mentioned in our presentation, and specifically with the legal aspect of Roe v. Wade, this is happening right now. This is happening currently. This data being out there and being shared with these tech giants, this is actually right now, this is where the concern is raised. This is where we mention the overturning of Roe v. Wade. This is where the real possibility of abortion criminalization and this data being used, this is where we see the concerns. By placing the data and making it explicitly clear to the consumer where this data is going and everything that, and just outlining what is happening with the data, this is where our solutions and our HIPAA adjacent guidelines comes in. Consent, transparency, the privacy policy is extremely important. And right now, having that sensitive information out there is where the issue lies.
In addition to that, I would just like to add on is that some of the benefits that does come with the selling of data to specifically medical research facilities, as I was discussing with one of the other judges, is that they do have to keep that under a specific kind of lock and key that as an app they might not have to, but that would be where a lot of the information would be perhaps a little bit more safe than just how the standard app currently functions.
Any other
Have you
questions?
any thought, since user growth is paramount in these startup type companies, have you any thought to, instead of a discount for opting in, a referral bonus for getting a friend to join the app as well?
Absolutely, that is definitely a great idea that we had talked about and that we could implement.
And also a part of that, we had discussed that, as Olivia had mentioned, but the part of this information being very sensitive, we had felt like it was more appropriate to use a very individualistic discount rather than you refer somebody else and you get the discount as well, or you refer somebody else and you consent in. We felt like providing a much more personalized and a very direct approach would try to benefit that business and user relationship as well.
Also, data is worth money, and what we want to make sure here is that not only Flow is profiting and being ethical on sharing data, but also its users. And that is going to just enhance the relationship and keeping users in the app.
Does 23andMe's recent bankruptcy and their ability to sell data without consumer consent impact us at all? Does that set any precedents? Does it create any norms that we can leverage? How does that impact us?
That is a really great point, and we had discussed the ethicality of 23andMe when we were presenting ourselves with this idea, and the issue was that with these lawsuits against Flow as well as with 23andMe is the lack of explicit consent versus they were using tacit consent, the very fine line print, and that's where we would like to bring it up to the front and kind of saying, hey, we respect you as a user and we want to make sure that you are fully aware and fully understanding where this is going, because you're not just a user, you're a person to us. You're a part of this community and you're a part of this family, versus how something with 23andMe with the lack of explicit consent did create a lot of controversial turmoil around the selling of information as a whole.
Because this is not, once again, this is not, we would like to stress that this is not just information such as what is your favorite color or what did you eat for dinner today. This is actual sensitive information that women input into their app because they want to better track their period, but also they better want to know, we better want to know what is going on with our bodies. And by using an app like Flow and then finding out, and some people use it for a couple of years, and to have that trust diminished, and to have all of that progress, that tailored period support be tainted by this lack of transparency is absolutely paramount. It's paramount. And this is why we need to move, why we have this
All right, I think that brings us to the end of our questions. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the timer. Yeah, great job. So now we're out of our character, we're just just chatting. I'd like to provide you with some feedback and also answer any questions you have. Is that, we're maybe just about 5-10 minutes or so. Yeah? Okay. All right, why don't we actually start back with online judges. Did you have any thoughts and feedback about just general presentation format, guidance, advice? Justin and Mo?
Yeah, I can start. I liked the presentation. I thought it was well delivered. It was clear. It was understandable. The points you were trying to make. I would say I struggled a little bit with what the primary focus was. Was it making money or was it actually protecting your end consumer? And so I was hearing privacy is important, but we still have to make money. That's fine. Your business, you gotta make money. There's no problem there. But it still sounded a little bit to me like we were trying to find a way to cut corners, and there wasn't a good business solution to meet us ethically as well. So in my mind, I'm still struggling there. I'm gonna turn it over to the rest of the judges to speak. The delivery was great, though. I thought you were well prepared.
I'm gonna jump in before we pass it out to the judges in person. I thought your presentation was great. I love the topic. I think it's very relevant in today's climate. I greatly appreciate you taking on a topic that's very challenging. I thought you guys did a great job kind of parsing out that, you know, you aren't HIPAA, you don't have to be HIPAA compliant, but pointing to a very well-known policy that a lot of people are familiar with, and kind of mimicking your suggestions off of that. I also really thought it was smart to include the revenue that hey, we are like a really big player in the game here, and maybe this doesn't feel like it should be important. But when you really break it down to revenue per user, we're really falling behind. I thought that was really smart to point out. I also loved in the beginning how you said you recognized that hey, this is like a really uncomfortable topic, but imagine how uncomfortable it is for our users. So kind of reframing that I thought was awesome as well. Overall, I thought you did a great job. I got a little, kind of lost in the details of how we're gonna make up some of those revenues. But overall, I thought you did a great job, very well prepared, very well organized. So, great job.
Yeah, I mimicked all the comments from our online judges. I thought all of you were very well prepared. You knew your stuff. You've obviously practiced each of your sections, and you knew how to like throw the ball to each other when certain questions were coming up. So obviously, a well-practiced team. I also appreciated your introduction and the way that you framed it, very confidently, very respectfully. I think that was a really good way to kind of open things up and make the audience feel at ease as well. Just respecting all ages, generations, backgrounds, creeds, everything. It was a very nice way of doing that. And then all of your individual sections I thought were also very well prepared. So overall, great job. I don't have any specific comments about how to tailor further, but I guess maybe just one is kind of similar to online, is that I was kind of maybe about 3/4 through just kind of losing you a little bit and trying to tie back the thread to what we're trying to solve here and why we're here, like what you want from us as a board or whatever our role was at that moment. But so if you could just tighten that up a little bit in your shorter presentation, that would help a lot to move faster.
I thought it was excellent. I think you guys did a really, really good job thinking the topic through and working to find solutions that address both the ethical concerns and the financial concerns. I felt like we were trying to walk the tightrope, and that is sometimes difficult. My advice would be, sometimes you can't walk a tightrope. You have to be courageous enough to have a position and recognize that that position may not be the solution to everything. And that's okay. That's what we as a board need to hear. And that's, you have it backed up, you have it foundational, you have it make sense. You're not gonna satisfy all of our desires, no matter what we want. So, I thought it was very, very well done.
Love the passion. You guys should be very proud of yourselves. It was a very good presentation, and I really liked the way it was structured, where each person had a defined role that's kind of like a rubric that we're looking for. So each person was an expert in whatever that field was. I thought that was a very smart play. I also really enjoyed how much you referenced our website in that case, because it's like, look, this is what you're doing. You need to be doing what you're saying you're doing, right? One thing I would caution there is, from my perspective, it's not necessarily omitting anything or being deceitful if we say we're not giving away personal data and then later define it. That's how contracts work. Like, defined terms are a very specific thing. And I kind of got lost on the finance side as well. I think a lot of the numbers that were thrown out are kind of just shot from the hip in a way, and they don't seem to be grounded in reality. One of the terms you used was like intangible asset goodwill, which is a defined term when you purchase like another company above the book value of that company under US GAAP. So you're thinking more like goodwill in the colloquial sense and not necessarily the finance and accounting sense. So that's another red flag for me, where it's like, okay, these guys don't necessarily know what they're talking about on the finance side. Especially like 20% is a lot. Just if we were to cut the revenue by 20% and it's only subscribers, so it's like, if you're going to suggest that I'm going to lose 40 million, I would like to have some projections that you're going to make it up other ways, instead of saying you're going to lose a little bit of revenue. Like 40 million is not a little bit of revenue in my mind. But I'm a finance guy, so that's kind of why I was focused on that. My huge kudos to you guys for your just public speaking and oratory performance. Hands down, phenomenal. Like, very well
right, we have just a few quick minutes here. Did you have any questions for us or any follow-ups or anything like that?
I'll call out, Emily and I left a couple of comments in the Zoom in
Oh.
case it helps you in the future here.
Okay. All right, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.